Welcome to the first of the Joe Berry Award podcast series. These podcasts, presented by former winners of the Joe Berry Award, will provide insight into the retail market during and after the COVID-19 pandemic. Our presenters today are Joe Berry Award winners Fairbairn and Clementine Churchill, who will discuss the COVID pandemic and retail market disruption. Graham is a travelled man who has studied overseas and recently completed a Harvard MBA. He is Innovation Manager for Arnott's. Graham's 2013 winning presentation focused on keeping manufacturing operations in Australia. Clementine studied psychology, using her knowledge to measure the influences of consumer behaviour on marketing strategies. She is now head of marketing for My Muscle Chef. Clementine's 2016 winning presentation focused on new product development and innovation. These podcasts are designed to provide you with a preview of the 2021 topics, which will be posted on opening day, November 1st, 2020, and available on the Joe Berry Award website. 2021 will be the 35th presentation of this unique and prestigious award, which will for the first time be promoted globally. The Joe Berry Award podcast will continue in a series of 8 with the objective of getting you involved and ready to register in November. The Joe Berry Award provides a unique level of exposure for you and your career aspirations. We hope you enjoy these podcasts. Clementine and Graham, welcome to the first of our Joe Berry Award podcasts. And to get things underway, we might start with you, Graham. In the retail industry, we are seeing COVID having the most disruptive influence. What are you seeing as being that disruptive pattern?
Yeah, thanks for inviting us on here, Keith. I'm really excited to be part of this new podcast series and appreciate you inviting me to kick it off with Clem. Look, it's been pretty clear there's been a lot of disruption in the retail industry, and I think the big one is really just the genie has come out of the bottle with the advancement of online and consumers who've made the shift to online and are likely to stay there over the long term. But there's also been this little side drama that I've been tracking a little closely, which is basically retailers not paying their rent. And I think this is important for online because if you track the conversations between Solomon Lew and all those the retailer landlords not paying rent and then trying to shift to a more flexible model where they pay rent as a percentage of gross sales, I think if that model sticks around after the pandemic, that could really open the opportunity for a lot of these retailers to shift more of their business to online without worrying about deleveraging their stores and seeing some of them collapse in the interim. So I think as we start to see some of those retailers build out that capability, I'd also be keeping a pretty close eye on how it is they're managing it with their existing landlords. And I've got a feeling it's some of these existing real estate commercial landlords who are going to be missing out in the new world.
It's interesting, Clem, because of the way your market works, you're a little bit closer to the online side. Where is the disruption as far as you are concerned?
Yeah, so COVID was really interesting for My Muscle Chef. We are a ready meal provider. So obviously our retail side of the business took a hit just because of the nature of, not many people out and shopping. But overnight, what happened was that our competitors sort of tripled. Your cafes, your restaurants, everyone started offering delivery services to your door, to home, to pick up, when previously, there weren't as many competitors to deal with. Combined with that of sort of behaviour pattern of people not being able to treat themselves by going out to dinner, they were looking for those sort of small little delights in terms of, I'll get my local restaurant and I'll get takeaway from them. And the other thing that we saw was the novelty of being at home. So I think HelloFresh and Marley Spoon saw a huge boom because people had more time to cook. Our brand is very much anchored in that convenience, the fact that you don't have time, you're commuting, you want to get home, you want to get to the gym. So we had to sort of think very quickly about other ways that we could still be relevant and functional to people. So, with 1,000 Zoom calls a day, how do you fit in lunch? You can have lunch ready for you. So I think like all brands, it was about, pivoting, the most overused word at the moment, but making sure that, how can you still provide value when, the whole world is changing around you and, what you normally typically thought of as a competitor was completely different to what you sort of thought was a year ago.
From the retailer perspective, are there any good examples of Australian retailers who are handling the COVID issue effectively?
I think for me personally, a lot of the sort of established omni-channel kind of retailers, I found Mecca Cosmetica was a really good example, who sort of, they were very clear on their comms around stores, but they had a great online service as well. And I thought they sort of really handled that uptake in sort of certain categories, and their comms to customers, their EDMs were all very tailored to what you were looking for during COVID, but also at the same time not trying to profit, overtly of the situation.
I think that's a really great point you make there, Clem, because I think one of the things that comes out of what you've spoken about is this theme of trust. And one of the ways that retailers add value to their consumers is by building up the sense of trust. And I think Woolworths and Coles did a really good response with this one in real time during the crisis by bringing on more store labor, having elderly and vulnerable shopping hours, a lot of public messaging from Brad Banducci, I recall, to try and manage the panic buying. I think that was really well done. There were other examples of, I think, the profiteering you spoke of, where Lorna Jane were promoting antivirus activewear, got fined for their troubles. There's plenty of other brands out there who are spruiking immunity benefits, which to my mind walks a bit of a fine line in an environment like this. So I think really when it comes down to it, the differences in the retailers who find the ways to provide value to their customers versus those who don't really have the substance to back up the messaging. But on the whole, I think it's been a pretty positive response, and just pleasing to see.
Yeah, and on that I read sort of a couple of articles about how, the ACCC allowed, Coles, Woolworths and Metcash to all get on the phone like each week and talk to each other about how they were going to handle, the people who were stockpiling, how they were going to make sure that the vulnerable still had opportunities. And I think that was really good as well, that, I think never in their lives would those thought that those types of meetings would be happening, but just to sort of come together and do what was required was really good.
Are there any standout retailers or companies internationally that you've got information on or you've read about in the way that they're handling COVID?
One that really jumps out to me, a really strong retailer with a purpose-built brand is really what Nike have done through all of this. And just building on this theme of giving value back, they had this great social media campaign called Play Inside, Play for the World, which was there to just encourage people to quarantine, exercise indoors, etc., etc. And if you look at the campaign, it had a snappy tagline, iconic creative, they had the athlete endorsement, all the things that make Nike successful. But it was also backed up with real action, and that's what made the difference. They had $15 million committed to COVID response efforts. They also made the premium programming on their Nike Training Club app free of charge. And that just comes back to the point we've been talking about so far, that the retail brands who build trust with their consumers and are seen to be doing the right things will be the ones that do well out of this.
Yeah, definitely. My standout is Nike as well. Through the whole thing, they just seem to be almost on the front foot of, doing that. They use user-generated content to create all their ads and had images of people, working out in their backyard. And traditionally, Nike is more, that aspirational athlete, but they realized that everyone was kind of struggling. So they went more of that ordinary kind of people path. And then they also recently released, a beautiful piece of creative around sort of their athletes and all the challenges that they'll be overcoming at the moment. So, I just think they really hit the nail on the head of what people were looking for, but at the same time, stayed true to their brand. And that's who's done well, not sort of, a car company who all of a sudden is saying, we're here for you or thank you with sentimental music in an ad, trying to get you to purchase. That's pretty, everyone goes, that just doesn't fit. But Nike realized, no, we can play to our brand strengths here and do it in the right way.
It's a really good point. And there's a lesson there about building up purpose brands, even when you're not in difficult times. I think Nike, they've been criticized in the past for supporting individuals like Colin Kaepernick, quite controversial, but when you're prepared to make some of those tough decisions and really build some purpose and intent behind your brands, I think you can really see how you can make a connection with consumers in both good and bad times.
Yeah.
Taking from the consumer aspect there and moving it to the employee side of things, through the disruption. We're seeing changes in business strategic plans on the way employees work and the places from which they will work.
I think, yeah, from sort of our perspective, overnight, it was everyone's shift to working from home. And I was in a business that, there wasn't a lot of sort of, people working from home or flexibility. It was always 5 days in the office. I think long term, there will definitely now be more businesses taking that more flexible approach, but the importance of face-to-face interaction, I think, is never going to go away. And if I think about those sort of, 12 weeks in New South Wales where we were all stuck at home, all the Zoom, all the Google Hangouts became very functional. You were just asking people, have you done that? Where's that project at? You really had to go out of your way to make sure that, hold on, let me ask first, how are you? And just that general kind of, conversational or making people sort of just feel engaged is a lot harder over video. So I think going forward, there'll definitely be a change, but I don't think it will be a complete move to remote working ongoing.
Yeah, I think the challenge that Clem outlines there is a real one. And here's a fun exercise. There was this article I was reading the other day. Tell me if any of this sounds familiar. So in describing remote work, they spoke about poor work-life balance, strong feelings of isolation, lack of visibility, lack of face-to-face communication. This was written back in 2009, so over 10 years ago, when iPhones were barely around. Skype was kind of the main means of communication. I think the point here is that managers have had to deal with remote workers for a long time. If you're, especially in the professional services firms where maybe you outsource certain teams into other countries, this is not a new phenomenon. This is the communication style that people have had to manage for quite a long time. So the good news is that there are ways to try and address that. And a lot of it just comes down to establishing clear norms on working hours, modeling behavior, having frequent check-ins, promoting individual accomplishments, et cetera. But I think the main thing for me is that you cannot slap a technology solution over a process problem. So if you've got managers who are poor at cascading information and aren't implementing these kind of processes, it doesn't really matter whether you're doing it over Zoom or Skype or Teams or a landline or anything. You need to address the behavior at its root to be able to keep your employees engaged when they're working in more flexible environments.
Yeah, and to build on Graham's point, I think it's a really good one. I think it actually just sort of brought to the fore often where there were communication issues that I think, you realised over Zoom how, oh, hold on, that is an issue or that information flow isn't right. And that can be in the office or over video as well. I just found that over video you could really, or over sort of remote working, it became more apparent. So I definitely think it's been probably also in some ways a good learning for many businesses in, okay, our approach to structure, our approach to a decision-making hierarchy, our approach to how we're actually going to get work done and project management. So yeah, I think it can be seen as quite useful as well.
Picking up on that then in terms of the changes and the disruptions on the internal communication and the dissemination of information path, is this becoming something that's affecting career path opportunities?
I think the big one for me, sorry to jump in.
Yeah, okay.
I think younger employees who are looking to accelerate the career, the core thing that they have to wrestle with that they don't often understand at the time is their visibility with senior leadership. Just being on people's radars, because the reality is the people who are making decisions over your career and pathway and when you're ready to progress, those decisions are made when you're not in the room. So it is really important to have a profile with senior leadership. I think the additional challenge in the current environment is that when everyone's working remotely and you don't have that water cooler conversation and everything that Clem was just articulating there, it is really hard to maintain that profile. So I think this just puts a little bit more onus on the individual looking to develop, to look for opportunities like the Joe Barry Award and other ways to try and just demand that attention when they're looking to build that career pathway.
Yeah, definitely. I think that that standout, I mean, if I think of my role in marketing, it's the same way sort of how you're networking yourself. It's sort of like, what are you going to do to find your point of difference and differentiation, and what can you do to sort of add more value or get that time in front of senior leaders, whether it is the Joe Berry, where it is putting your hand up to say, look, I want to do a stretch project or something different. Just making sure as much as you can put yourself sort of at the top of people's mind.
Any specific examples of people who are showing or taking advantages of this to improve their career?
Well, not that I can personally think of. I'm trying to. I think there's a lot of what I do think is the change in education. So obviously, because of online, everything now is also easily accessible. So previously, if you wanted to do a course or something, you had to physically go. That was probably too hard. So there's a lot of upskilling opportunities that you can do at home. So I think a lot of people probably are going to sort of jump on board with that, and the way that, you can learn more. Or if you've always been interested in sort of, digital marketing or innovation, there are lots more opportunities to do that. And then that can be a way to sort of differentiate yourself.
I think that's a good call. I think the other thing I'd build on that is that with the amount of pivoting that's going on at the moment, there is no end of work for individuals to get involved in. And in an environment where the pandemic keeps throwing up new needs, new issues, new crises to deal with, I think the benefit of having diverse perspectives is really important. So what that means is I don't know if there are any experts anymore. I think it's just a case of people being able to bring their opinion into things and take on work that needs to be done. I think that's a golden opportunity for younger individuals to find those forums where people need a little bit more help to get some of the work done and a different set of views. Just go in, demand attention, ask for the work to come to you. I think you'll be surprised at where it ends up.
Yeah, and I was sort of obviously looking, I think it was on the news last night, now I think 1 million Australians are unemployed. Especially, millennials have never seen a recession in their lifetime. They're used to, consistent years of stable economic growth. The thought of not having a job has never been anything that sort of is probably they've thought of. The chance to sort of work and every year kind of, work your way up the ladder has always been there. So I think it's going to become more and more important, as Graham pointed out, just to, there'll be no more experts. What can you do to make sure that, when you're applying for a job, you're the one who's sort of the most front of mind again, and that, you're the one that sort of they're going to pick.
In the Australian today, there's some chatter about CEOs considering that nothing really will happen before there's an all-out cure for COVID. Do you have any predictions on how long we'll be under the constraints, or the restraints, I should say, of COVID? And is there any indication from the industry on its expectations?
I've been thinking a little bit about this, because I think if you look at the narrative across a lot of outlets, it's almost been trading off this false dichotomy of either open up the economy or lock everyone down while we wait for a cure. I think the reality is it's not an either-or proposition. And if you just look at places like Florida in the US, where they have tried to open things up, if your consumers and just everyday people are too scared to go out and interact, it doesn't matter how much you open up the economy. You're still going to get teachers striking, not wanting to go into school. You're going to still have to homeschool kids and not be able to go out and find work. So I think the reality is we are going to have to continue to work with these precautions and take active measures to stamp out clusters as they emerge for us, just within the foreseeable future and until a vaccine starts to come through. And frankly, even then, I think once a vaccine comes through, we still have all the work ahead of us to get a lot of skeptical individuals to take it and get the kind of immunity that we need for this to be successful. So all in all, what it means for retailing is I just think we need to adjust to this being the new normal and find ways to get around some of the issues that are being popped up, as opposed to waiting for the Deus Ex Machina to come and help us out. Yeah,
definitely. I would agree. I think sort of the way I phrase it is to just expect the unexpected, sort of as plan for uncertainty, which, is an oxymoron in itself, but I think that's all you can do in this situation. And even if the vaccine does come, I think, at the moment I read an article that was saying, 50% of Australians have new shopping behaviours. So, and they're going to hold on to them because, we've been in this period for so prolonged that habits have been established now. So it's about identifying what's going to actually stick around regardless of the vaccine, more online shopping, people sort of have now used to that as well. So I think there are certain behaviour traits that we can tap into, knowing that without COVID, they're going to stick around for the long term. And how do you start adapting to those now as a business?
It's interesting in those situations of what is happening and what we are seeing in terms of changes. Our next podcast in the series will focus on cross-industry ramifications and disruptions to business because of other people's issues. Are you experiencing any measurable effects on your business from other industry changes?
I think sort of what I spoke to earlier, sort of for our business, it is the rise of sort of that more restaurants switching to being an online service now as well. So I think that is, so hospitality has probably become a competitor for us that previously we would have never thought. So, your traditional sandbox of this is where we play, this is our space, has just got a whole lot bigger. So that's something that I now sort of am far more aware of. And when building plans, I have that front of mind. Probably, and the other one would be supply. So we rely a lot on chicken, beef, and, seeing the rising cost of that, the demand for that. So how that affects your business, how that affects, your P&L, that's probably one of the biggest factors that is affecting, our business, and just managing that.
Before we go to Graham, is there any effect if the restaurants and the like are doing these takeaway food products from your perspective? Does that mean they're actually advertising a little for you?
Yeah, so they are doing a category job as well in terms of generating awareness for that you can have, your food delivered. However, I would say it's a very different behaviour. It's one where you're kind of treating yourself, whereas our product, My Muscle Chef, is very much that more functional food. You're getting all your nutrition, you're getting all your vegetables, all the protein in that one meal that we know we've done it for you so that you can get on with your life to do other things. Whereas the restaurants and cafes is moving down the path of, look, you're not allowed to go on holiday. You can't travel anywhere. So why don't you treat yourself at home with, a nice dinner?
Graham?
Yeah, I think one of the things points that Clem made just now was this idea of building up capability for the consumer behaviors that are going to persist. And one area where I think we're going to get affected is the jump in e-commerce and online sales through grocery. Now, Woolworths and Coles had to shut down their offering in the panic buying because their capability and their operating model couldn't deal with it. But I know that they're making substantial investments behind the distribution centers in their stores to be able to service the kind of online demand that we're expecting to persist after COVID. I think for a supplier, that raises some questions, because if you've built a lot of your sales capability around and your retail marketing around being able to influence an in-store environment, the question is, what does your marketing look like in a world where you cannot influence the market environment where the consumer is shopping, namely the online channel? So I think there's a bit of thinking that we have to do as a supplier base to think about what that marketing looks like in a world where more and more consumers are shopping online. I think there's a lot of opportunity. I think there's also a lot of risk that we might have to account for too.
Just to close off our podcast then, Graham, you mentioned earlier about exposure, giving yourself exposure within the business today, and the concepts of things like the Joe Berry Award and how that can give you that exposure. Any words of advice for the people who will be listening to the podcast?
Do it. This is the same advice I give every year. I think in the current environment where getting your visibility is so much harder to do, it is even more important. I think the Joe Berry Award is just such low-hanging fruit for young, up-and-coming industry individuals who really want to accelerate their career. And I never really know how best to position this for people in terms of the upside. I mean, there's building confidence, there's learning more about the industry, there's putting yourself on the radar, there's the great prizes you can win, there's network in the organization, there's all sorts of reasons why you should do this. The common refrain I kind of hear is that maybe this year's a little bit tough, I'm a little bit busy, but if I think back to when I did my entry back in 2013, I remember being busy. I remember working pretty late in the night to get that essay crafted. But if you ask me now what I was doing back then that was so busy, I couldn't tell you. But what I can tell you is just the impact this award has had on my career and how it gave me the belief to apply to Harvard Business School and how it educated me beyond the silo of my organization and my function. I mean, those are just benefits you can't put a price on, and I think it's worth every hour and every dollar that you invest into it.
Yeah, I would just echo everything Graham has said and just do it. Very similar, I am a little bit busy. If I think of those 3 to 4 months, I think it was when I was trying to do the essay, like I remember working hard, but it was all worth it in the end. And it's a short period of time. Like, I think that's the other thing. It's not, years and years. And I just learned so much, even just doing the essay. I learned actually what I was passionate about in my career. That was the biggest thing for me, that I found some things that I was like, you know what, this is actually what I love. I love understanding this. And then when people came to ask me, well, what do you want to do? Or when I got asked those development questions, the Joe Berry Award actually helped me answer that question. And off the back of that, people go, oh, wow, she really knows where she wants to, go. She's really clear on that. And people respect that and then know, okay, well, she's clearly ambitious. We've got a role for her here, or if she's really passionate about that. So that would be a major thing. You learn so much, and then the network that you do get exposed to, as Graham has said, is amazing. And that confidence piece, it just really does boost you, winning or not. The fact that you can go in, write an essay, if you make it to the finals, you do an hour-long presentation. I mean, that sort of set me up for a whole lot of presentations that I did. When I was walking to do one at work, that was sort of nothing compared to what I'd done with Joe Berry. So yeah, it just, honestly, I can't talk highly enough of it, and it really is the most worthwhile thing, I've done.
I still remember the fuss that Arnott's made of you the day after you won. For someone who loves the limelight as much as you do, I thought you were going to shrink into the crowd.
I know. I was like, oh my God. Yeah. So yes, it does also sometimes help you get used to actually having attention.
Clementine Churchill, Graham Fairbairn, thank you very much.
Thanks, Keith. It was great. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks for having us. Always a great time to connect.
Our next podcast will feature 2010 winner Karen Waters discussing how cross-industry connections will be changed forever because of the COVID pandemic. You can connect with our podcast through our website. Joe Berry Award 2021 opens on November the 1st, but you can pre-register from the beginning of October through our website, joeberryaward.com.au.